I'm Jason King, the Byrne Chair and Director for the Center for Catholic Studies at St. Mary's University. In today's episode, I talked with Dr. Jonathan Malesic. He was here as part of the Lynn Great Speaker Series. His writing has appeared in the New York Times, Atlantic, and America. He's also the author of The End of Burnout, Why Work Drains Us and How to Build Better Lives. In our conversation, we talked about our work, how we got into theology, and what teaching is like in higher education today. Welcome to Beyond the Lecture. Welcome, John. It's great to have you here. I appreciate you coming to give your talk.
Yeah,
I wanted
to be here.
Yeah, I wanted to sort of start off with just asking you to give us a little background about where you're coming from and how you got into theology.
Yeah, I got into theology totally accidentally. I had gone to Catholic high school, had to take religion classes there, hated them.
Why'd you hate them?
I mean, there wasn't. I don't know. I mean, it just like it was. There wasn't the same. I didn't feel the same kind of like intellectual engagement that I got in some of my other classes.
Gotcha.
So, you know, English classes at my high school were fantastic. Math classes were great. You know, science, history, all of that, and religion. There just wasn't the kind of like. You know, like the intellectual gears never quite caught.
Yeah.
I think.
I asked because my wife taught religion in high school, and she was like, "I'm just trying to get it so they don't hate it." Yeah, it's just that sometimes I think it's the age and the challenges.
Yeah. I mean, right. If you can just like leave the door open a crack, then you know that might be a win. Yeah. Because what happened? So I ended up again also by accident going to Catholic college, and I was a physics major to start. So I love math and science. I really wanted to like do science. But I had to take religion classes and I didn't know, quite what to expect. And it was nothing like my high school religion classes. Like there was all of that intellectual engagement that I wanted. And, I had gone to the Catholic University of America, and, some of my professors, I don't even mind, like name checking them because I have such a gratitude to them. But yeah, I mean, the first class I had was with Michael Stober.
Oh, yeah.
And he's just a wonderful, person and thinker and just this tremendous mind and a great teacher. And I just loved he just asked these weird questions that had no answer. And we would just talk about them for, an hour or hour and a half in class. I was like, I just want more of this.
Yeah, I had him in graduate school and he was wonderful. Precisely for that reason. It's a class on the theology of suffering. And we were reading just all sorts of fiction novels and theology pieces, and it's like, this is really pretty cool. So and he was very kind to all of the grad students over there. So
and so I ended up double majoring in religion and physics, but I decided like in religion, I'm more interested in this. This is honestly like the math kind of got too hard for me. In my physics classes, or I lacked the patience to keep going and really solve the problem. Those are maybe the same thing, I don't know. But in religion, like, you didn't have to have like, aha, here is the answer. This is what the electron is going to do. And there was no math. So I wanted to pursue that in graduate school. Very much despite Michael Stober's, like he said, he recommended I not do it. He's like, you should go to business school and like, just like have a nice stable career.
Yeah.
And I didn't listen to him.
It's funny because I was a math major in college too, and but for me, I remember the professors being so enthusiastic about like the proofs and stuff like that, and I thought, that's not very interesting to me. And so where does my interests lie? And that's where I shifted in some ways.
Yeah.
So business, and you didn't follow that either.
Right. No, I didn't. But yeah, so I went straight to graduate school in religious studies, and I didn't set out to be a Catholic theologian, whatever that is. I went to a graduate program at a secular public university, and though one where a lot of people were studying religions that they also practiced, and so I kind of got, for the real theology nerds out there, it was the kind of like, George Lindbeck kind of, cultural linguistic approach. Let's get really deep into how this, religious system works. How do the people who speak this language speak it? What are the rules of the game? Which works pretty well, I think, whether you're an insider or an outsider, and even though, like I said, I didn't set out to become a Catholic theologian, I kind of thought I would be a good candidate for jobs in theology departments at small Catholic colleges, and that's exactly what I ended up doing. I was hired to teach theology at a small Catholic college in Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
which you know something about.
Yes, yeah. I taught for many years in Pennsylvania. There's tons of small Catholic schools all over Pennsylvania, Philly, Pittsburgh, and everything sort of in between, and Wilkes-Barre.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is interesting. I'm just thinking about that time period too, and that was such a sort of a shift, right? Like it's especially in Catholic theology coming out of Vatican II. You had a generation that were teaching, but the next generation was almost post-Vatican II that wasn't trying to go backwards, but also trying to figure out the practices, figure out the cultural sort of shifts, and that kind of Lindbeck model. And I'm also, I was influenced by Hauerwas and McIntyre on sort of the other side, thinking about those senses of tradition and how do you kind of think about those in these different settings. That was a fun kind of time. I remember thinking of it like it was like putting pieces together and trying to both understand my own tradition and kind of figure out what's going forward. I grew up in Kentucky where it was mission territory, first of all, and I was French Catholic. There's the background, and when I stepped in the Catholic youth campus, it was all like Irish and Italians. And I thought, I don't know what this is. I'm trying to sort of figure out this context. So that was a fun time. It was a fun time. So tell me about, I want to set this up by telling a story that I remember that you told one time that I've used many times in some of the classes. But I want you to tell me about the story that happens like after you get into theology, you get your teaching position, and you start to sort of experience burnout, which is the part of the trajectory of your career. But before you got there, I remember hearing a talk, and I believe it was the Society of Christian Ethics, when you're talking about the nature of work and society and how that your identity is oftentimes sort of shaped in the workplace. And you made a comment that one of your best jobs was working in a parking garage. And I want you to tell that story, but I also use this in class all the time because all my students are aspiring, they're wonderful, they're always like, what do you want to do? I was like, I had a friend whose best job was working in a parking garage. And they're like, why is that? So,
yeah. So I graduated with my PhD from the University of Virginia in 2004, and I did not, I did not have like a teaching job, lined up right away. And I didn't have any job. So I was so focused on getting my dissertation done, defending it. I had zero plan about what my life was going to be the day after I defend. And I soon realized, okay, well, I actually do need a job. Just some guys I knew in Charlottesville, they worked at this parking lot right across the street from Thomas Jefferson's Rotunda. The parking lot served primarily all of the like shops and restaurants on this, this stretch that's called the corner. It's not a corner, but it's called the corner. Someone has to mind the lot and collect the money and all that. And So yeah, I got to know these guys, and they're like, we think you'd be a good parking lot attendant. I just defended my PhD in religious studies, and they're like, I think you'd be a good parking lot attendant. So I took that job, and had some other kind of odd jobs. I worked in a restaurant. I worked at a research center, and it was a good job. It was so much better than I imagined it could be. The money was not amazing, but it was okay, and it was better than I would have expected, honestly. And I would sit in the booth, take money. There's not a lot going on. There's a lot of dead time. And I'd read, listen to music, talk to people who came by. And it was a really great experience. And I think the reason, my shift would end at 5 o'clock, and I would just go home, and I'd be like, long day at work. And wait a minute, I'm not tired.
Oh, yeah.
I just sat in the booth for 8 hours. That's not exhausting at all.
Yeah.
So the job didn't damage me. It didn't get in my way. Well, it didn't get in the way of my flourishing.
Yeah.
I was able to
find,
meaning and other kind of, goods of life outside of my job.
I'm just covering this section in my first year seminar class, and we read the first 2 chapters of Hard Times, which is grad grind school, and McJokumchild's the teacher, and they were laughing about it, fortunately. But we had this long conversation about, for them, a lot of times things are a grind, and how do you it doesn't, whatever they're doing doesn't seem to be enabling their flourishing, but seems to be this kind of I need to do this, 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 and we kind of got to this point where well, what comes after this? And they're I don't know. And they hadn't really, they knew, because they're good kids, want to do well by their parents, want to do well in school. They worked in high school, they did the extracurriculars, they got to college, their first year in college, they're ready to work hard, and so, but they just almost haven't had time to think about those broader purposes. And so that's what I was, the job comment when I use your story in my class is trying to get them to think about those bigger terms. And that's hard to do, especially when they're so close to the ground and the costs are so high and the stakes seem so high to them all the time. There's not a lot of room, I think, for them to think about it.
Yeah. I think that we assume that, everything outside of work just kind of takes care of itself.
Yeah.
You don't need to, you need to study and learn and develop skills so that you can get a job. And this is, maybe the most absurd thing, is that, so much of the focus for college students is just getting that first job.
Yeah.
It's not then again, I understand why. I understand where they're coming from, and I sympathize to a large degree. But spending 4 or more years and hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a first job is that's not a good bargain. If you're not learning more than that, if you're not learning something that's going to benefit you, 20 years into a career, or it's not going to benefit your family life or your life, or your community life or your life of, in your spare time and leisure and stuff like that, your moral and spiritual life. If the purpose of college is to get a first job, it's a very poor bargain, I think.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why I have enjoyed teaching in colleges for so long is that when I was in college, it was this expanding experience precisely for that. I was a math major, and I was focused. I didn't really know what I wanted. I knew I was good in math, so I did math, but then I had all these other classes, art and history and politics and even the natural sciences were really fascinating. The physics class I had, and it was just kept on like, I realized like, oh, this world is really kind of big, and there's lots of options out here. And that experience was so transformative for me. And I met my wife, and she had the same kind of growing experience in college. And that's the thing that I'm trying to want to hold on to, or at least share with students, that like, I again, coming from both Appalachia and then in the San Antonio area, when you got a lot of first gen and lower income students, like I understand the importance of a job, but it just can't all be about that. I want to kind of open that sort of expansively, or at least share that sort of possibility. So when they are like 25, 30, 35, like there's something to draw upon that they can think about. Yeah.
The other thing is like that first job, it is almost certainly going to be the worst job you ever have.
Yeah.
The pay is going to be terrible. It is not going to be what a lot of students think it will be. It's the responsibility is going to be, it's not going to be like amazing problem solving or something like that. It's I think that there's likely to be, I think, a lot of disappointment in these entry level jobs. And so like I think that we ought not to build them up as like, well, the purpose of college is to get that first job. It's like you get that first job and be very disappointed. So the purpose ought to be something else that in a way doesn't like pay off, so to speak, for decades.
Tell me a little bit about, because part of your story that I think is fascinating is you had this career that's oftentimes held up as perfect, not only sort of teaching, but you get tenure, which has this job security, and that's what everybody sort of wants. And that's where you started, at least especially towards the end, seemed to sort of experience frustration, and then eventually sort of left the job. So tell me your sort of reflections upon that and how that's fed into some of your work on burnout.
Yeah. So getting a tenure track job teaching Catholic theology, this was my dream job. This is exactly what I believed I was preparing for and I wanted.
And so many of us in grad school are like, dreaming about this possibility.
Right.
And even then there was like whispers, there's not a lot of jobs out there.
Right.
So,
I mean, it took me a long time, like several cycles on the job market to get this job.
And I remember this was the American Academy of Religion, when they would do like those kind of cattle call jobs, and there was like 50 of us in like this waiting room, and you might get called, and then your buddy gets called, and then your friends, like it was just nuts.
When I was interviewed for the job I ended up getting, it was here in San Antonio.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that's one San Antonio memory that I have.
Oh, that's good.
Probably the first time I visited the city. So I got the job. I did well. I got tenure. I taught, cool classes. I, tricked a few students into not hating theology. Some even liked it. Some became majors. And I mean, like I said, I was living the dream. And after I got tenure and spent a year on sabbatical, and I was away from, I was in a different state on sabbatical, and then I came back, and it didn't feel like the dream so much anymore. There was, the college had gone through, crises that are fairly common, unfortunately, to small private colleges. There was a budget crisis. There's, an accreditation crisis simultaneously. And
I sometimes joke that our institution went through a 5-year plan every 2 years.
Right.
You're trying to manage these things.
This is just like as like a weird aside. Like I still have, like I had a dream the other night. It was like an accreditation nightmare dream. Where like I had a dream that I was in a meeting with someone from the regional accrediting agency from Middle States, and like we got in this huge argument. All these years later, like that's still with me somehow.
Yeah, a quick aside on that too, because it is like so traumatic, and middle states in Pennsylvania is like it's they've got your standards, and then whether you meet them or not, and like if you were to fail a standard, it's like catastrophic, and so everyone's terrified of this. And then we went through accreditation down here, SAC COC, and they like were reading the initial sort of reports. Oh, we've got like these many sort of things that we need to sort of deal with, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we're going to lose our accreditation. Like, it doesn't work like that down here. So they have this kind of like process where they intentionally find all of these pieces and they put them all together, and then we sailed through. But that like even the differences in the accrediting body and the stressors that I had there were like totally triggered down here. I wasn't even on the assessment when I just was hearing the reports about it. So
sure.
So that is anxiety inducing.
Yeah. So I mean, we had like these kinds of problems, and my wife is also an academic. She was working in another state. I mean, it was driving distance, but still, I wasn't seeing her all the time. And it was, there was salary freezes. There was just like a lot of difficulty and disappointment all the time. And I mean, frankly, I was just unhappy. I was miserable. It got to the point where I would wake up at whatever time, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, something like that, and a couple hours later, I would have to like go back to bed. I don't mean like take a nap. I mean like get into bed for like another few more hours. Like it was just that exhausting.
The stress and the anxiety just like depleting you. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I just dreaded going to the office. And this went on for a couple of years. I didn't really know what was going on. This is my dream job. I'm good at it. Why am I having this reaction? And eventually I was like, all right, well, something has to change. I took a semester of unpaid leave, went, to live under the same roof as my wife in Massachusetts, came back, thought, all right, I haven't been, in the trenches for a semester. Surely now I'm rested.
Yeah. I was just tired. Yeah.
And within 2 or 3 weeks, I was exactly the same as before. I was just as miserable, just as exhausted, just as frustrated and angry. And I realized, like, I can't do this anymore. And fortunately, my wife got a tenure track job in Dallas. And so, that was like perfect. This is the opportunity. Like, I'll quit. I'll follow her. I'll do something else with my career.
Yeah, and that sort of led you, I think, to some of your more recent reflections and writing in the book, the End of Burnout. And the lecture series that I invited you to is broadly considered like human flourishing, just trying to think of the ways in which a constructive way to think about sort of our lives. And I wanted to bring you in because of these kinds of reflections about sort of work. So like, and I think that's the kind of trajectory of your stuff, is to try to think through those things in terms of how human beings do well. It's not just a critique. It's like this attempt to think through those sort of pieces. So maybe talk about that thread that runs through your work. Once you leave these sort of positions, once you find those jobs that are such a hindrance to sort of human flourishing, how do you see living in a advanced capitalism, work required kind of sort of environment? What are thoughts about that sort of piece?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the problem comes from the place that work is expected to occupy in our lives. It's often seen as like the center of a flourishing life. I mean, like family would be the other kind of competing center. But yeah, I think that we expect so much from work. We expect it to, fulfill us totally. Like it is. We don't only expect it to be like a paycheck, like I did, at the parking lot. Like at the parking lot, I had such low expectations that the job far exceeded them. And when it's a job that you think of as, more than a paycheck, but like as a vocation, as self-expression, as service, as, all these things, it's just really hard for any job to live up to those expectations.
Yeah, when it's trying to fulfill all of those of those sort of needs that we have as a human being.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you go to companies' recruiting websites or something. They promise the world. In some cases, literally.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's gonna be fun. It's going to be, you'll have great teamwork. You'll have like respect.
Change the world. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and it's like, you're filling out, TPS reports basically. A lot of the time.
Yeah. I'm just thinking now if Stover's come, go get a business degree.
Right.
Like in some ways you could contain it to like, yeah, this is just like, I'm just doing these kinds of pieces. It would kind of help relieve those pressures. I'm thinking too, because you made the comment about marriage, that's some of my work too, like that marriage has that same kind of dynamic sometimes too, when you try to hang all of your fulfillment on a single person. Like even if they're wonderful and great, there's no way they can fulfill meaning, purpose, constant happiness, joy, friendship, like all. And so that part of that is we expect it to carry so much weight that it really can't, even in good situations, like much less in sort of challenging ones. So that piece I think is sort of really interesting, trying to shift that identity away from the workplace, or away from sort of work occupying all of those pieces.
Right.
And it is really dominant. Like I find that, and when you were talking, what I was remembering is Hauerwas's comment about John Paul II's Laborem Exercens. Hauerwas is like, this is the worst encyclical ever written, and precisely because he criticized him for like conflating your Christian vocation with your work that's there, and he was kind of pushing back sort of against that. So,
yeah. I mean, I think that the switch, the mental kind of switch that needs to change is from seeing work as, I don't know, something like the pinnacle of like human activity or something like that, to like the platform on which, which we need. Like we need this platform. The way that our economy is set up, you need to stand on that platform in order to do just about anything else.
Jobs are important.
Right. But like, and there is meaning to be found, I think, in work. But we've got to look for meaning, higher forms of meaning elsewhere.
Yeah. I wonder, I'd agree with that, but I wonder too if when you're working in theology, if it becomes almost more dangerous, because that sense of like teaching is this noble profession, but then faith comes on top of this, and if your work's wrapped up with that thing, I found, maybe I'll speak from more personal ones, like it's so much easier for my identity and my spirituality to get wrapped up in this work because it is about theology and God and faith, and it's harder than I find it necessary to make those distinctions, but almost more sticky in that sort of process. So do you think, I guess I'm kind of asking and reflecting on my own experiences. Do you think that's the case? Do you think like if you're like, say, working for a church or working for these noble, I'll put them in scare quotes, those ones that culture sort of holds up, do you think that makes it more difficult to differentiate your identity from your work when you've got those things? I'm thinking of the parking garage example too.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I think that like a lot of people who work, for the church in one way or another, inside or outside, academia or schools, I think that they are stretched and they are expected to, do more without expecting, so much like monetary or time support or something like that, because it's like, well, you're doing this for the church, you're doing this for God, There's a really good article last year, maybe the year before, in the other journal by two theologians at University of Portland. Brandy Daniels and someone, her colleague, about the way that vocation gets used in Catholic institutions. I think they're focused on academia, but it's beyond that, as a kind of cover often for poor, labor conditions.
Yeah.
Like, well, you're working for a vocation. Like, you should love this.
Yeah.
Why do you need, why do you need extra time off? Why do you need, a higher retirement contribution? Why do you need, cost of living adjustment, things like that?
Yeah. It's just so interesting how what both that role is economically, but also then when religion gets sort of mixed in. Because I've seen so many people that do such amazing work in the church, but they're also prone to sort of burnout and trying to figure out, like they just feel exhausted, like they're sort of stretched so thin, and trying to find ways to manage that. I think it's been sort of not working with, but being friends with people that work in parishes. I've seen that quite a bit. One more, then I want to switch to my kind of last question, but you also had some insights from Benedictine monasteries about sort of work. So say a little bit about those. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, while I was, before I burned out, when I was still doing theology, I started to get interested in the theology of work. Think about work as a moral and spiritual theological problem. Or a better would be to say, like, the moral and spiritual and theological questions that are raised by our work. And the thing is, like, I just kind of became what I was studying, in a sense. And one source that I went to try to find some inspiration, some solutions, some alternatives, was the Benedictine tradition. And a Benedictine motto is, ora et labora, prayer and work as the, what they do. So it seems like they're thinking about it. It's in maybe a more fundamental way than other communities of religious they've got it theorized in a way. And when I read the rule of Saint Benedict, I realized that they set all of these limits on work. So the motto is work and prayer. But it's not an equal balance. Like, prayer weighs a lot heavier, at least according to the rule of Saint Benedict. Certainly, if a Benedictine community is operating a school or a university or other kind of institution, there's a lot of work to do, for sure. But for more contemplative communities, it's not an equal balance. Like, prayer takes precedence. There are all these ways that these Benedictine communities limit work and keep it from taking over their lives. And I think that the most basic and profound way is the schedule. It's like the chapel bell rings. That is we have something to do now. We have to go. We have to gather. We have to pray as a community, and you can't be working during that time. You can't work through, whatever, terse or something like that.
It kind of sets limits on what you can do in the work, but then also kind of sets a priority about the things like, you can do that. We need this work and it needs to be sort of done, but like, don't let it take over. Right? There's other things that you need to stop this that are more important.
Exactly. There would be a time for work. Like, whatever you're working on, you can pick it up again after prayer or the next day or something like that. But this community does not. I mean, the community, the monastics, they need to work in order to sustain themselves. But that's not the purpose. Like, work is their platform to support their prayer. And I went to, I spent a few days at a really amazing Benedictine community in northern New Mexico, the Monastery of Christ in the Desert.
Oh, yeah.
And they're trying very hard to live as close to the letter of the rule as you can in the 21st century. So they don't eat like beef, pork, things like that, four-footed animals. They every couple hours, they're back in the chapel. They pray every single office. They do it very slowly. And it's, the way the time works in that canyon is really profound. And like, it just, I don't know, I wasn't there long enough for it to like fundamentally change my thinking. But
you could kind of see the reworking. Yeah, I think about that too from both like work. I love my work, so it's kind of disposed for already to like take up a bunch of my life, and then married with kids, so that's the other sort of piece. But now I'm heading into this age closer to retirement. My kids are off at college, and I was just kind of came upon that question. I'm like, there's this moment, and I remember it was like last year, and I was like, I don't really have work I have to do, and my kids were all like occupied, and I didn't know what to do. And I was like, that's a problem I need to think about. Like, what are these? I have these roles, and they're very important, but like, what else am I sort of living for? And trying to reflect and think about that. And you can just see those things easily sort of taking over, partly because they are so important. But then how do you push back against it when everything's kind of pushing you forward, or also sort of hanging so much sort of weight and importance and significance on this? Yeah. It's really, I think it's fascinating work. And so I'm looking forward to the talk tonight.
Yeah, thanks.
My last question, which is always the one which I'm interested in having the conversation with, is all purely speculative, so I don't sort of hold you to it, which is like your thoughts on like the future of Catholic higher education, Catholic intellectual tradition, Catholic higher education. My basic theory is things are changing. Nobody quite knows what they're changing to. So what thoughts do you have about the future?
I think those are like two different questions. The Catholic intellectual tradition and Catholic higher education.
You can answer either one or both. So
Catholic higher education, in this country, I worry about it, just because, we know, like, there are all of these particularly, like, small colleges, sometimes in mission, former mission territory, that, they're struggling. Like, they had a business model that apparently doesn't work, today. We see closings, we see mergers and things like that. So that is worrisome. And, just like demographics, mean that, there's probably some more contraction in the future. But like the Catholic intellectual tradition, I think, in like Catholic colleges and universities are one vehicle for that. But this is a tradition that has, it has proved so adaptable across time and across the globe, in different cultures, and it has been stewarded in so many different forms, and it has had, it has drawn from, other intellectual traditions, and in order to kind of, maintain its vitality, and I have few worries about I think that I don't know what the Catholic, I'm not going to like sit here and predict. Well, I think that in different years,
because if we do, we'll be wrong. Yeah,
right. I think Lonergan's going to be back. I don't think I can make that kind of prediction. Anselm is due for a renaissance. Yeah, exactly. No, but I mean, because I don't know, and like that's I think what's exciting about the Catholic intellectual tradition is that it has flourished in so many ways, and it has, I mean, the first great theologians, they were bishops and basically like pastors, and the intellectual tradition was stewarded in monasteries. It was stewarded in universities, and it has been stewarded by church councils, and like it's I mean it and so many different religious communities and so many different cultures and intellectual currents, like it's really resilient. I think it's built for kind of whatever history throws at it.
Yeah. That's really hopeful.
Yeah,
I think that's sort of fantastic because it gives you this sort of possibility that like, oh, it could go, move, pivot anywhere.
Mhm.
And as you were talking, I was thinking just of your own work, both interviews, the Substacks, the books, like and there's this, a different way to sort of approach it that, may or may not be the dominant way, but it's just this sort of openings of things that are there,
Yeah.
and expansive sort of view. That's
yeah.
great.
I mean, it's always possible for things to collapse.
Yeah.
Like institutions collapse,
Yeah.
countries collapse, like churches collapse. That does happen.
Mhm.
But I think that I think we often flatter ourselves by thinking, oh my gosh, like the world is on the verge of collapse. In, my goodness, my lifetime, I'm living in the most important moment. And I think if you take like a little bit of a longer view, you say, well, wait a minute, some of these things that we think are on the verge of collapse have been through a lot over a long, long time, and they have found, people. I mean, it's not like the tradition, has this its own kind of will, but like people have found ways to, to steward it through. And I mean, I think that's true of countries and in other institutions, and certainly for like value systems and
we're St. Mary's, founded by the Marianists, and they were founded in the middle of the French Revolution, like underground, without sort of parishes and these little synodalities, like it's just people getting together, like in ways that you would never sort of expect.
Sure.
That's really great. I like that. That's a wonderful ending to end on, like hope and the possibilities. Thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.